And here we are. This is the very first, the #1 live stream for Motivation Code that I know of. I'm relatively new to the team. My name is Kathy Zant. I am here with Motivation Code CEO Chris Lema, a legend in the WordPress space, a legend in all sorts of technology fields. We are so happy to be here, and we are having difficulty streaming to Facebook for some reason, but it looks like we are doing okay on YouTube. So hopefully everybody from Facebook can find us over here. Technology, it is a challenge. But Chris, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for kicking this off with me here at Motivation Code.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Well, for those who are in our LinkedIn group, and if you haven't joined our LinkedIn group, I will drop that into the comments down below. Join us in our LinkedIn group. It is the MCode Catalysts, and we are doing a challenge over the next few weeks to basically leverage mindset and motivation as it relates to wellness and health, because I've seen with family members, when you don't have your health and your wellness, it's kind of hard to do anything else. It's really foundational to so many aspects of life, whether you're just trying to show up for your family and having energy for the kids running around or teenagers needing rides everywhere. Health and wellness is just so important to so many different things. And so we're kicking off that group with this challenge because it's not something where it's just like, okay, follow a diet, eat these foods, go do this exercise. If it's not happening up here, it makes it a lot harder. And with Motivation Code and understanding how you're motivated, you can do a lot to make it a lot easier. What do you think, Chris? Like, has Motivation Code been a part of your journey?
Yeah. So I agree 100%. If you don't take care of everything that's embodied in health and wellness, you can't really do anything else, right? When I'm on a plane and I fly a lot, they tell you, hey, first affix your mask before you put the mask on someone else. And, as parents, that's contrary, right? You think, let me get my kids set up first, and then I'll take care of me. And that's often what happens for entrepreneurs. And I was an entrepreneur for decades, where I was just working on products and plans and go-to-markets and everything else, and not working on me. And it got to the point where it was unclear how long I would have in terms of a lifetime to do those things. And so the doctor looked at me and said, have you heard this message in the airplane? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. And it's one of those moments where you go, okay, I got it. I heard the message and I was ready to do it. But you don't lose 150 pounds simply because you hear a doctor say you need to lose weight, right? We all go to a doctor and we all hear you need to lose weight. I mean, I think the doctors, I think that's their first thing on their checklist, right? Is you need to lose weight. It doesn't matter what you have. Oh, you have arthritis, you need to lose weight. Oh, you have a bad knee, you need to lose weight. Oh, you have back pain, you need to lose weight. Oh, whatever, right? And so it wasn't shocking to hear it, but it was a choice about 6 years ago to say, if I want to have lasting impact and a legacy, then I need to take care of myself first. And as you mentioned, right, mindset is the most important thing, as it is, all my entrepreneurial efforts. It was never the work. It was, how do you see the work? How do you see the challenge? How do you see the context? How do you see the environment? And once you see it the right way, then you have a path to building a product, launching a product, taking it out to market and all that good stuff. But it's all mindset. And so the start for me of losing the 150 pounds was, and keep it off 6 years, and the line keeps going down, right? It never goes back up. No fancy diets, no fancy drinks, no fancy workout routines, just consistent little tweaks to get all the way there. It all started with mindset.
Take me back to when, did it start with the doctor's conversation that sort of was the decision that happened for you? Or what was the initial motivational catalyst that happened for you that made you decide to make a change?
It was my family. So before I was married, and we're celebrating in about a month, we'll be celebrating 20 years married. But before I got married, I weighed about 500 pounds. So when I mentioned 370 was when I decided over the last 6 years to actually proactively make my health important. But 20 years ago, I was weighing in at a nice, healthy 495. And that's not healthy at all, right? Don't do it. And I thought I was going to die. But I also, at that point, I was depressed and I'm like, I don't care. The only thing I was doing was working. So I met Melissa, who later became my wife. And I said, well, there's no way I'm going to ask her to be my wife if I don't take care of my health. Because that's just wrong. So I started doing some work to lose some weight, and I lost a little bit. And then we got married and had kids, and I lost a little bit, but mostly it was plateaus. And so, it's good news to get from 500 down to 370. But when you're at 370 and you're just sitting there, and I've been sitting at 370 for multiple years, it was one of those, like, you go, the kids are no longer 4 and 5. I'm no longer, it's not like, oh, I got to go coach soccer and run around with the kids. It's like, no, there's really no reason. Nothing external is going to drive a change in my life now. Like, I already got the girl, I got the kids aren't making me run around. There's no reason to change except that this isn't healthy, right? And if you want to have long-term impact, you need to be around. And so I went for my every 5-year medical thing, which you should go every year, right? But I wasn't going every year. And I went to my one in 5 years. And the guy just said, what are you doing to take care of yourself? And I'm like, nothing, absolutely nothing. And I came out of that conversation and I looked at my wife and I'm like, remember when I said I wouldn't do this to you? Remember when I said I would take care of myself? Because I'm like, well, the last 5 years I've just been working nonstop and I haven't been taking care of myself. And she's like, yeah, but she's not a pusher, right? She, like, my parents, when we first got married, my parents were like, you need to help him fix his health. And she looked at my parents, this is how strong she is. And she goes, if you haven't done it, right, in the first 35 years, you think your son is his own man. He'll do it when he's good and ready, right? And she just backed off. But about 6 years ago, I just said, okay, I haven't really made my own health a priority. And so I'm going to do it. And you would think that would mean, okay, like, what you're going to sign up for a gym and you're going to change your eating and you're going to, you're going to start working out. You're going to do like 16 things. Yeah. I didn't. I did one thing.
Yeah.
Right. One thing. And that was, I had a friend named Joy. She's still named Joy. And I reached out to her and I said, I know you sell this shake thing. And I've looked at my food and my heaviest carbs are breakfast. So if I could just replace breakfast with one of your shakes, right? And it was Body, they're now called Body, but they were called something longer. I'm going to get it wrong. Beach Body is the name of the company, which is not, you should not confuse it with Bath and Body, which sells hand soaps, towels, and paintings. Like, don't get them. Those are not the same thing. But I was like, okay, I just want to do one thing. I want to change my breakfast from breads and danishes and donuts to just a chocolate shake that is somewhat better. And I did that for like 6 months without changing anything else. And I started seeing a little bit of movement, tiny bit of movement, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And of course, my friend Joy is like, if you drank less soda and if you did that, and I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I could be amazing, but I'm not that guy. I'm just doing one change at a time. If you're a software person, you know that every software person in the world, when they find a bug, what they want to do is change 14 things. And that's not how you do debugging, right? If you're not a software person, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you're a software person, you change one thing at a time and you see if that fixes the problem. Because you don't want to make it more complicated if you change 14 things and then they go, well, what was wrong? I don't know. I changed 14 things. So systematic debugging is the way I approached my health. So I said, I'm just going to change a shake for 6 months. Then the next year, all I did was change sleep. And I'm telling you, for someone who was sleeping 4 and 5 hours a night, when you get in bed at 10 o'clock, you're not tired because you normally go to bed at midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning. And I forced myself to stay in that bed. Nowadays, the Apple Watch has time in bed and then time asleep. If they had had that, 6 years ago, if I had paid attention to that, maybe they did have it. I'd have been like, oh my God, I was in bed for 10 hours. And they're like, and you still only slept 5 hours, right? Like I was just laying there and you can't look at your phone because looking at your phone doesn't actually help you fall asleep, right? So I left my phone in the kitchen and I went to the bedroom and I got in bed and I laid there and my brain's running and I'm like, okay. But over the last 6 years, I've gotten to the point where it now takes me less than 10 minutes to fall asleep. I'm in bed for about 8 hours and I'm sleeping about 7.5 hours. And that's it. That's all I did, right? I lost 150 pounds by sleeping.
Wow.
I'm ready to write a book called How to Sleep Your Way to Weight Loss. I think it's only 1 page long, so I don't think it'll sell. But all I did, other than the shake, all I did was sleep. I only started adding some exercise now because it's easier now. 150 pounds less, right? I'm now like 225, and at 225, I actually can move and not be in challenge, right? I can breathe through a 20-minute workout. I couldn't do that at 370, right? But sleep was the biggest deal. And then you start doing little things like, again, one change at a time. I put blackout blinds and drapes. I have the full roller that covers the window, and then I have drapes that are thick that cover the roll. I always slept better in hotels, right? Because those were super blacked out. And then I get to my house and I'd be up. We changed the windows in our house from single pane to double pane, so I didn't have to hear the bird that was waking me up every morning. Then we changed the blinds and the drapes so that I could sleep until I was ready to wake up. Then I changed my morning meetings, right? I stopped doing meetings at 8 a.m. and I started doing meetings at like 10 a.m. So I can sleep as long as I need to. And then I wake up naturally, not by alarm, right? Every one of these was like every 2 to 3 to 4 months, I would add one little tweak. Then I started touching food about 3 years ago, where I'm like, let me cut my lunch, my hamburgers, or when we go out to dinner, let me cut it in half and just eat half, right? Because I know I'm going to eat later. It's not like I'm never going to touch food again. So they were tiny little adjustments one at a time. And I'm an achiever. We talked about motivation, right? And there are 8 different dimensions of motivation. And one of them is the achiever. And the achiever loves to achieve, but more than that, because lots of people want to make movement. They want to succeed. They want to achieve. But more than that, they want credit, right? They want to get the credit they want. And so for me, it was all about, if I have to change sizes and buy more clothes, which means you have to allocate a budget for clothing, but I keep buying clothes and people keep going, oh my God, have you lost more weight? And I'm like, gold star. Like if someone asks, have you lost more weight? I get a gold star. And if I can get a gold star, right, every month for 6 years in a row, right? 6 times 12, what is that? 72 months of gold stars is what I needed, right?
Yeah.
Now that's not everybody else. But as an achiever, I just wanted the gold star. The gold star is, will someone say, right? When I was a heavy guy, I liked loose clothing. I just wanted to be comfortable. But loose clothing does not showcase that you've lost any weight. So I had to start wearing clothes that fit, which is really, really strange because you're used to hiding yourself. And now you're wearing clothes where you're like, oh my God, am I showing too much? Right. And my wife would be like, yeah, maybe not that size yet. Right. And you're like, oh, okay. But as an achiever, I wanted to make small changes that never had me going backwards, never had me gaining weight, right? Just make little tweaks, scaffold them, layer them on. Nothing was big. There was no big program. I was never losing 10 pounds in a week. I was losing 1 or 2 pounds. I started weighing myself every day, which is horrible because your body just naturally goes up and down.
Sure.
It goes up and down within a couple, like it's not like you gain 10 and lose 10. It's like you gain 2 and lose 2 and lose 3 and then gain 1. And so it plays with a roller coaster of your body, but you're like, all it's doing is showing me what normal looks like. Normal is not a straight line. Normal is lots of wigglies, but keep going at it and keep getting those gold stars.
I love it. That is so much great advice. And one thing that you mentioned that I just wanted to highlight, because I noticed this is something that you do, like even with our team meetings a lot, you know, a lot of people get fixated on, okay, what am I going to do this week? Or what am I going to do this month? And you take this long range, like you really have this ability to make this long range view. This is it. This is what we're doing this for the long term. And we're not going to worry about these like little things. We're not going to worry about what's happening this week. And you really can get that big picture. Is that something that you use that helps you kind of stay focused when like maybe you have a bad day or when you have a bad night of sleep? Because I'm sure that still happens. Does it?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there are certain days where I hang out late at night with some friends. And my buddy Sean and I will go smoke some cigars and we just get into conversations and all of a sudden it's 2 a.m. And you're like, okay, if I want at least 7 hours of sleep and I leave at 2, I get home at 2:30. It takes me half an hour to wind down. That's 3. 3 plus 7 means 10. So, okay, I'm going to sleep till 10, right? My day is going to start really late. And then you look at your calendar and you're like, you have a very important meeting at 7 a.m. Uh-oh. That means I'm going to have to shortchange my sleep one night. Well, I'm willing to do that one night, you know, in 7. I'm not willing to do that. I don't want to cheat myself 2 and 7 or 3 and 7. So you do that 1 and 7. And that means I need to make up that sleep over the next several days. And I need to be watchful about what it is I'm doing. And so of course you're going to fall off and you're going to climb back on. And, you know, that's just the nature of the beast. Nothing is perfect and no one is perfect, but you can't look at your goals, or at least for me, I don't want to look at my goals as what can I do this week or what can I do this day? I want to look at what will be the payoff 5 years out, 10 years out. And so when you take the long eye at stuff, it turns out you don't need to be a superstar and you don't have to do amazing things when you're willing to let time do the work. So when I started writing and blogging on a website, I didn't say I want to blog for 365 days when I started. I just said I want to write for 30 days, but hopefully at the end of 30, I'll be able to do a second month, right? And then all of a sudden it was, you look back and you're like, oh, 365. And I'm not the guy that likes to make the announcement up front. I'm not an announce first, right? Because we know those people and they're motivated by the audience perspective and the audience applause of, ooh, they're going to embark on doing something. That's not me, right? Because I would end up being the guy that dies on Mount Everest. Like I announced to the world I was going to climb Mount Everest and then I died halfway up the hill. That would suck, right? Because you're like all the eyes on you and you died. No, I'm the guy that goes up to Mount Everest, comes all the way down, and then at the end says, here's the photos of when I went to Mount Everest. Like I would rather make the announcement at the end than the announcement up front. And I know there are people that get super juiced and excited up front. That's not me. Let me go do it and do it quietly and do it for a sustained amount of period, because small effort placed over and over and over consistently for a long period of time gets that impound interest, gets that compound interest. I mean, that literally makes the achievement so much more because you were staying in it so long. Right. And that to me, again, you're not going to get the applause. You're not going to get the achievers looking for the gold star. You're not going to get the gold star because you did something. Like when I was younger, I went to the gym and I was an athlete and I went to the gym and I worked out for 2 hours. And then you come home and you're like, I did 2 hours in the gym. Right. And then what happens the next day? You're laying on your bed or couch like, I can't move. And the whole next week, you never went to the gym. I'd rather go to the gym 20 minutes and then just layer on the days until you're like, hey, look at how much I've accomplished over 6 months or a year. So I think the long-term vista, right? Yeah. The perspective of something over the long term and the perspective of the compound interest of doing something consistently over time pays more dividends.
It does. It definitely does. And I think also too, when you do have that long range view and you have that longer range goal and you're patient with yourself on sort of the daily fluctuations. It makes those days when you get invited to the Cheesecake Factory. Who's going to say no to that, right?
Yeah.
And you know those plates are going to be massive, and
Yeah.
you're going to have a calorie overage, and it's going to be divine and delicious. You get to do that. You don't have this restriction on enjoying life because it just fits in with the fluctuations. You can be more patient with where you're at while still maintaining that longer range view of like, you're in this for life. This is not, while we were doing this wellness challenge for 28 days, it's really not about like, okay, let's like diet and restrict ourselves for 28 days. I would much rather be in this mindset of let's expand our minds for 28 days so that for the rest of your life, you can have a better mindset that is going to be foundational for not just your wellness, but also I think a lot of this trickles down. I mean, you've talked a lot about how your mindset affects business.
Yeah.
How is changing your health and really making these dramatic improvements, how has it helped you with business, with relationships, with other things that are not necessarily health?
Well, I think it's exactly what you said. It is that everything, right? Whether you're talking about business or you're talking about your relationships or you're talking about your health and wellness, everything is about how you see things. It's all in your head. It's a mindset. Yeah. We have all been in situations where our friend comes to us and says, I got to tell you what you said hurt me. And you're like, I didn't say that. I didn't say that at all. Right. It's because they were running a narrative through their head and they heard words and stuck it in their narrative, and that narrative. And by the way, that doesn't mean you shouldn't apologize. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have empathy. It doesn't mean you shouldn't connect with them, but you realize so much of everything we do starts and sometimes ends right here in your head. Right. Mm-hmm. And so having the discipline of focus, having the discipline of paying attention to what counts has had an incredible impact, not just on my health, not just on wellness, but on everything. Because the truth of the matter is, me worrying about something, and I'm not suggesting that people who suffer from actual anxiety should just mind over matter and just say, I'm not worrying about it. But for many of us that don't suffer from clinical anxiety, we can still spend most of our time worrying about things. And whether it's so I love my wife. I love her more than I love any other person in the world. But if my wife was on some sort of diet and she got invited to a Cheesecake Factory birthday party 6 months from now, she would worry every day from the day she got the announcement until the day she went. She would worry for 6 months every day about, well, what am I going to eat and how am I going to eat? And what if they have this? And what if they don't have the thing I want? And I'm like, none of that helps you. There's literally no amount of worry that's going to change the menu in advance. Your worry is not going to change what they have in the actual restaurant that day, right? What they ran out of and what they get. And none of it's going to change your caloric intake. Worrying doesn't help. So I'm a big fan of locking things down and saying, I'm only going to give energy to the thoughts and the anxieties and whatever else that have a direct things I can change, right? That's where I'm going to put my energy. And so I go to a Cheesecake Factory and it's not, oh my God, I'm going to overeat. It's, I'm going to cut this burger in half. And then I may still order the dessert and take 3 bites, because what I'm telling myself mentally is I will taste this again. This is not the only time I will taste this. And when I'm in a conversation with a friend and they're telling me that I've hurt their feelings, which happens a decent amount because I'm a big stomp my feet, walk around and not always know what it is I'm doing. And someone says, you hurt my feelings. I go, okay, but what do I care more about? Being right in this debate? Like, I didn't say that. That's not what I said. That's you're layering in your, or do I care about the relationship? Well, if I care about the relationship, then put that at the top and let's worry less about being right in this argument. Right. And so I go, oh, that's fair. I get that. And I'm sorry. And I apologize. And I legitimately will try and make a change. But I worry about the things I control. I worry about the things that matter. I have a list of what matters constantly. And that helps me train my brain where to focus. And so many times, the things of learning focus in health and wellness apply in relationships and apply in business, that then people think it's the other way around. Oh, you are so focused in business that it affects everything else. And you're like, no, it's at cross purposes. Anytime I learn to focus, it helps me and pays dividends everywhere. But being able to be very clear about what matters is an incredible, incredible tool to helping your health and wellness and to help you in business and relationships.
Yeah, I love that. Can you talk a little bit about, I want to just kind of dovetail motivation code and the different motivational dimensions into that ability to focus, into that ability to really know what matters, because it's going to matter different for everyone, right? What matters to you and what's going to motivate you is going to be very different than what motivates me or what motivates someone else. Each one of us has our own sort of blueprint, our own sort of periodic table of motivation that gives us a map of what those things are. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'd like to bring that into the conversation.
Well, it's a great question. So it turns out lots and lots of people are motivated lots of different ways. And we have crafted, right, the 8 dimensions of motivation. And if you take the MCode over at motivationcode.com, we tell you at the end of your assessment, we tell you which of these dimensions of the 8 you are stronger in and which ones are less, they move you less, right? And so it's the achiever. I'm going to try and do this and get it right in alphabetical order, right? The achiever, the driver, the influencer, the learner, the optimizer, orchestrator, relator, and visionary. Those are the 8.
You got it.
And they're all different, right? And so, if you're talking to an achiever, they have that perseverance. They know what they need to do to get the gold star. They are goal focused, right? Whereas driver, which is my number 2, right? Driver is all about, they live for the pressure, right? If you're a driver and you went to college, you didn't start your paper 2 months before it was due. You might have started your paper literally 6 hours before it was due, because you're like, yeah, now I'm focused, right? And you're like, I live for the pressure and I want to, and the challenge needs to be significant. Writing a 5-page paper when you have 2 months, that's not a challenge. Writing a 5-page paper when you have 6 hours, and that includes the time that it takes to run or ride your bike to campus and turn it in. Ooh, now that's a challenge, right? And you're like, let's go, let's do this, right? So drivers function different because of the way they're wired, right? Whereas influencers, it's all about persuasiveness, engagement, the social construct, right? Multiple people. Learners are all about the ability to not only learn something new, but express it, share it with others. They want to explore the new ideas. The worst thing in the world for them is rinse and repeat, right? So when they focus, their focus is learning, is growing, is sharing so other people can learn and grow. That's what brings it to the table. And it's fantastic when you do it, but you also sometimes have to put a time boundary on it. Like, you can't learn forever, right? You got you're going to have to lock this in. And so sometimes we have to put an external guide in place, some guardrails, to ensure that the focus doesn't stay focused forever on just the learning part. You got to share the part, right? And so, when you're talking about someone else's focus, right, it's learning how to get the best out of them, but also how do you adjust it, right? The optimizer is the one that's going to tweak everything and make it better every time, which is awesome. But sometimes you need to help them focus, right? I had an optimizer work for me, and I love her. She's amazing. She's incredible. But she would take on any project that was optimization oriented, right? Anything that she could fix and make better, she would do. And other people were happy to get paid so that she would do their job for them, right? So they would just go, well, this looks like a big challenge. And she'd be like, I'm on it. She was on 14 committees. She's doing all this work. And then she'd be like, I'm exhausted and there's so much, I'm never going to get done. And I would be like, hey, send me your list of your 14 projects. And all I'll do is prioritize them. I'll just help you by highlighting that not all optimization efforts are the same. They're not all equal. So I'll tell you from your boss's perspective, these 3 matter and the rest of these don't. And these 2, by the way, that other people are paid full time to do that. Let them do their job. You don't have to do that for them, right? Orchestrators are all about pulling people together. They want to make things happen, but they want to make them happen. They're doing it with groups. And so the worst thing you can do to an orchestrator is make them do something alone, or relator too, right? Relator are all about engaging with people, putting those people in cubicles and having them work alone. You're not going to get focus, right? They're literally going to get up. If you say, sit here for 6 hours and just work on this alone, the orchestrator is going to get on the phone and start networking over the phone to build coalitions and pulling people together. The relator is just going to get up, right? Within an hour or 2, they're going to get up and walk around and be like, I can't do this, right? I need to be able to lead others for orchestrators or connect with others for relators. And visionaries are your big picture, come up with new ways to think about things. Focus for them is like sometimes you have to govern it by putting a time limit on it, just like you would with a learner. Like, hey, this is great. I love having some new ideas, some fresh ideas. This is good. Today, like do it today. Tomorrow we get back to doing the work, picking up the lift and doing stuff, right? So when you manage people in these 8 different dimensions, understanding who they are and knowing how you can help them focus is not about you saying, do it the way I do it. It's about saying, you want to do it the way you do it. I just need to come alongside and help a little bit so that we get the most out of you. And we don't get the, what I would call blind spot, right? Every one of us has a blind spot. And what we don't want is we let them run at their good. We've all seen something that's really good in a certain amount of time. If it's gone too far, it becomes not so good. And you want to stop that, right? Because they can't catch it. They don't see their blind spot. By definition, it's blind. So you have to come outside of it and say, let me put some guardrails. Let me put some conditions to help you focus.
Sure. Yeah, I see. It's so effective when you're leading, when you can, because nobody wants to be boxed in and saying, okay, here's your tasks for the day. And here's it almost makes people feel like they're just an intern and I do my tasks. It's the end of the day. People want to show up like, what I do matters. It matters to something, whether it's mattering to the people on my team or it's mattering to the, I'm visionary as my primary. So I want to change the world. That's my motivation. If you just like, okay, just go do these things and hit these numbers or whatever, it doesn't matter if I'm not like helping somebody do something. That's why this challenge means a lot to me, because I know how much better people's lives are going to be if they do one thing, drink a little more water, like choose something, that one thing that you talked about. I know that it's going to matter. Yeah, one thing. And I know it's going to make a difference. And that gets my visionary excited that I'm doing this work, right? But since working with you at Motivation Code and doing all this content and talking with people about this, there's such an epidemic in this country, in this world, of leaders being disconnected from their people. I hear it from everyone. People DM me saying, or they comment on some of the content that we're sharing out on social media about what they're feeling. And this is a little off of the health and wellness thing, but what can people do? Let's talk about some people who are working for organizations where they just feel like their leadership does not get them.
That is health and wellness too, right? Because at the end of the day, if your boss doesn't see you, they don't understand you, and they don't give you assignments that reflect who you are, it's like putting a small pebble in your shoe. And for the first 2 minutes, not a big deal. The next hour or two, a little bit bothersome. 3 days walking on that, you're going to be in actual physical pain with physical maladies. we call it burnout, but burnout is there's lots of different ways to define that burnout, right? And whether it's an injustice at work where someone's getting promoted when you should have been promoted, or it's giving you work that is way beneath you, or giving you too much work, all of that will affect your ability to do anything. I was working at a company, to be remain nameless. And I had so much friction during the day that when I went home to bed, and I'm a achiever, I'm a high, go get it, make it happen, move the needle, move the needle for my boss, move the needle for an entire business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to bed, and I'm having, and I don't ever sleep. I don't ever dream, right? Like I don't know if that's a bad sign or not, but I just don't have a lot of dreams, or I don't remember the dreams when I wake up. But for a period of time at work, I literally was having a nightmare every single night. And the nightmare was just conversations with my boss, conversations with my boss's boss, conversations with my boss's partner, conversations with an employee at work. I'm living out stress every night. And you don't think that's going to affect my quality of sleep and how it's going to affect my day job and my performance?
Yeah.
Right? It's insane. And you're like, yeah. When your boss doesn't see you for who you are, doesn't leverage you for who you are, doesn't give you assignments that make sense of who you are and what you can do, it will certainly affect your health and wellness. And so it's cheap and easy to say, get a new job, get a new boss. That's not easy, right? And there's work, but you can prepare for that, right? You can say, okay, let me focus on some very specific metrics, needles that I can move, even if they're not the biggest,
Mm-hmm.
and they are within my control, because a lot of metrics are ones that are not fully in your control. But let me grab a couple that are in my control, and let me start moving those needles, and I'll do it for 6 months. And even though I don't like my job and I don't like my boss, and I'm not seeing, they don't see me effectively, I'll move the needle for 6 months. And then when I go to apply somewhere else, or when I'm sharing my story somewhere else, and those people ask, well, what have you done over there? I actually have multiple things I can say about my time here versus, I didn't do anything. I just hate my job. I just complain every day, and I haven't set myself up for success to go somewhere else. Every company that hires you hopes and expects that you'll be healthy and well, and hopes you can hit the ground running on day one. That's what they want. So my job is to figure out, if I was moving on, my job is to figure out, how do I demonstrate that I can hit the ground running, and what do I have to do to be healthy? No one wants to hire you, and then you're like, oh, by the way, I can't handle the pressure of this job, right? Years ago, I hired a guy, and he was in a leadership role, and then within a couple of weeks, there was a little pressure at work, and he was like, I got to take the next couple of days off. And on the one hand, you're like, I want you to be safe. I want you to take care of yourself, but also, what's going on? And they're like, well, at my old job, they would tell me exactly who to meet at what time and what to work on. They were in his old job, they were time blocking his calendar, and I don't do that. I'm like, and he's in a leadership role. I'm like, no, if anything, you would be time blocking your people's calendar, but I'm not time blocking your calendar. And he had gotten himself into a situation where he was overwhelmed. And I'm like, okay, like, yes, take care of yourself, but also we need to figure out you and set you up in a way that you can be successful. Cause I don't want you to be taking 2 days off work every 3 weeks. Like that's not sustainable. Right.
Yeah.
So it's both. You are responsible for you. You are responsible for taking care of your health. You are responsible for figuring out what kind of needle you can move to be able to tell your story to the next place. But it's also not just on you. It's your boss, or it's your work. It's the culture you're in. And you hope that you're working for people that do care about it. Now, I will say the last thing is, if you're unhappy and no one knows, then it's totally still on you.
Yeah.
Right? The culture may suck, but if you haven't mentioned it, the culture's not changing.
Right.
Your boss may suck, but if you haven't mentioned, or your boss may be really great, and just doesn't know that you can do something else, or doesn't know that, something's bothering you. I was talking with my buddy Sean Hesketh the other day, and he mentioned the name of a book, which I will find out so that we can put in the show notes. But it was a book about confrontation, right? And it was like The Caring Confrontationalist or something like this. And someone gave it to him, right? If you know anything about my buddy Sean, you know he is the nicest, sweetest, most caring, most gentle, just most uplifting, empowering. I could go on. We would run out of minutes. He's so incredible and amazing. But his boss was like, dude, if you don't speak up, it's not actually being nice. It's not being nice to say nothing. Sometimes the nicest thing you can do is say something. And so he got him this book, right? And he read it. And so the other night we were talking about it and saying, yes, sometimes like you have to be able to raise your hand and say, I'm unhappy, to give someone a chance, right? Now, if like in the job that I was talking about that give me nightmares, I had to go up to my boss and say, this is why I'm having nightmares. This is why I'm stressed. And this is why I'm bringing it to you. And then they didn't do anything about it. And then I resigned, right? Like, it's fair. It's fair for you to decide not to do anything, but it's not fair for me to be upset at you if I've never brought it up, right? Oh, look at that. Sean just commented, caring enough to confront. That's what it was. Yep.
There it is.
Close. Calling it The Caring Confrontationalist was close. Like if you had typed that in, you would have found it. But yes, that's the name of the book.
Chris, you're just rebranding it. Just giving it a brand refresh there.
Starter. Yeah, that's right. The Caring Confrontationalist. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we spend most of our waking hours at our work, job, or running your business, whatever it may be, and it can be a major source of stress. And I know a lot of people turn to baked goods. That I will do that. That's my confessional. I love scones. That's when my life got really stressful, I turned to, and I screwed myself up by turning to baked goods to deal with the stress of my life. I had to find different ways of doing it because
you know what I did?
What's that?
I bought a $45,000 motorcycle. I do not recommend that move, but I was literally at another job. I was at this job where I had, for a brief period of time, I had two bosses. Both were C-level, right? So I'm a VP and I have two C-level bosses and they're both asking for full-time work and I'm doing two jobs and I am pulling my hair out. I'm so stressed. I'm just stressed because I want to be a pleaser, right? I want everything I give them, I want them to be happy with, right? So they weren't bad people. They were great people, but I literally was losing my mind. And I'm like, you know what I need? I had just finished watching the entirety of Sons of Anarchy. And I was like, I need a motorcycle. And my wife was like, no, you don't. And I'm like, I do. And I bought that motorcycle and I rode it like 6 times. And then they realized, I think Chris has both of us being his boss. Like we should just make one of us his boss. And they fixed it. And I still had so suffice what I'm telling you is baked goods is bad, but it could be way worse, right? Like it could cost you way more when you get into one of those crises. So if you have a crisis at work, fix it at work. Don't let it bleed into the rest of your life.
Definitely. Yeah. It's just, when the day is done, it is just a job. You and your health and your safety and your wellness and your cortisol levels all matter way more than any of the minutia of the day. But I'm one of my goals with Motivation Code is to make that Monday morning dread, the Sunday night, like they have those things, the social media posts that say like company culture is how your people feel on Sunday night. Right. And I've had my Sunday nights in previous positions where my Sunday night was just like, oh crap, this does not feel good. And I want that to end for everyone. I want everyone to wake up on Monday morning excited. And I think Motivation Code is one of those things that can do it because I have been in positions where I'm just like, time to make the donuts. And I just don't want to do this. And I've gamified it. In retrospect, I'm like, oh, well, I was trying to do my influencer thing. I didn't realize that my secondary dimension of influencer was at play. And that's what I was doing until I took Motivation Code. If I had known that then, I probably would have made more drastic changes. But Motivation Code gives us the tools to better know ourselves, to make better decisions, to go to our bosses with that communication to say, hey, look, this is who I am. This is how I light up. How about I do this with the company? Will this help move the needle? Where can I fit in my motivations so that I can be of better service to the team?
And I'll tell you, we've had college students that took it, right?
Yeah.
One of my closest friends is a woman named Jen Bourne, and she works for us, and her daughter took the assessment, and she literally showed up at the end of the school year to, I don't remember how many, 7, 8, 10 interviews for a summer internship. And she used the MCode results to shape how she answered her questions. And every one of them was like, okay, come work for us. And not only did she get the offers, but they literally said, we've never met anyone at your age who knows herself this well. And you go, oh, it's great for college. You're like, whoa, stop, right? I have friends that are grown adults, right, in their 50s, who have literally said, I took it and now I know why I've been unhappy at this job. It doesn't light me up on any level. And in fact, it's leveraging some of my motivations that are at the lowest of my chart. And I need to quit my job. I need a different job. I need to go, work somewhere else.
Yeah.
So literally from the time you're 20 to the time you're 50, this thing adds value. And it doesn't stop at 50. It's not magically like only available at 20, right? You could take it at 18. But the point is, we rarely spend enough time looking at who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. And it's only when you stop and you look and go, okay, I had spent several years not caring about my health and not caring about my weight. And I had turned it into this thing like, there's so many things I have to do to get this right. And I turned it into something really big. And then you wake up one day and realize, that's not how I do anything at work. When I'm at work, I don't say building a new SaaS from scratch with nothing means building a team and then doing market analysis and then building out a scaffold baseline of a product, then taking it out to some customers, then getting the feedback, then tweaking it, then putting the rest of the team together to build it, then actually pricing it, then putting a web page up with all the information, then putting the sales pages up, then training people. Then you don't do that. I've never done. I'm like, hey, get to the next step. When you've done that, get to the next step. I do it as a series of experiments, a series of little challenges. And each time I learn a little more and each time I move forward and I take ground, and that's how I work. So why would I treat my health any other way? But I wasn't. I was making it into this big, but like, I'm going to have to do all these things to get healthy. And you're like, nope, one experiment at a time, one change at a time. And so the same is true for anyone when it comes to health and wellness, is slow down, stop, spend a little time looking in the mirror, right? How are you wired? How do you work? What will help you take the next step? Not what will help you run, 1,000,000 miles. What will help you take the next step? And then do that and evaluate it all, right? It's what I call creating feedback loops. And I didn't make up those phrases. People use it, but I just said, hey, this is what you're doing is you're creating feedback loops, and you're creating a lot of them until you learn to live by the feedback loops. You learn to live like every day. I do a little experiment here, there, and then I check and see, is the feedback giving me positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, right? And that helps me move the needle forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the feedback you get from Motivation Code is that, I've taken all the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, you name it. I've taken tons of different personality assessments, and it's coffee or tea, Thursday night going out with friends, or Thursday night home with a book. It's like all this either or stuff, right? And it's just like, sometimes I like tea. Not often, but sometimes I do, right? And Motivation Code didn't ask me any of those questions. And when I first loaded it up, I'm like, I'm going to have to think about stories. I have to come up with my stories. What stories? I need to think about this for a minute. But it really, it's all about your story. It's about the stories that you know of yourself. It's not like somebody else's designed this test. It's looking at you. It's you looking at you. It's you telling the story, and it's the system coming back and telling you, yeah, this is who you are. It's all about you, right? Can you talk a little bit about how Motivation Code was designed in that way, so that it really is about the story that we know of ourselves?
Yeah. So if you take most personality assessments out there, right, what you're getting is a magic trick. It's a really neat magic trick. But what the magic trick is you answer 50, 100, 1,000 questions on a Friday night. Would you like to go out with friends and get crazy drunk and end up in jail? Or would you like to stay at home and read a book because you have no friends? And you're like, okay, first of all, those feel really extreme. Second of all, which Friday night? Not all Fridays are the same. And sometimes I want to go out with friends and drink, and sometimes I want to stay home and read a book. But also, you're giving me 10 seconds, 20 seconds to pick one of these, right? That I don't know that I can give this a good answer, but you pick one and you go on and you do it again. And they change it up, but you end up answering a bunch of these questions. And at the end, it says something like, Chris, you have a goatee. And you're like, whoa, how in the world, from all that questions about what I like to do, did you figure out that I had a goatee? That's magical. And then if you wait just 10 minutes, you're like, but I knew I had a goatee. I see it in the mirror, and having a goatee doesn't do anything in my life. And so most personality assessments play this magic game of, let's give you choices, then we'll statistically analyze all the choices, then we'll give it weights to these things, then we'll create a meta narrative based on the abstraction, because we've taken all these questions, tucked them into other categories, and then we've used this meta analysis to generate a new score of some things. And then we're going to tell you the magic trick. And the magic trick says you have a goatee, or you have brown eyes, or you have graying hair, or you like pandas. And you're like, whoa! And every one of us comes at the end of it and goes, this is amazing. But what you should do is wait 2 weeks and then go, how has this changed any of my behavior at home, with family, at work? And if it doesn't change anything, then the magic trick was just that. It was a trick. It didn't do anything. We didn't want to do that. So when we bought, right, we did not create SEMA. We bought it from others, but we went and bought 5 companies that were all SEMA related, which is the System of Integrated Motivated Abilities, or, it's a SIMA acronym. When we bought all the SEMA companies and pulled them together, my sense was, this is different than everything else. And it's 60 years of motivation science behind it. And this is more able to be applicable than anything else. And the main reason why is because it doesn't start by giving you a whole bunch of random questions about what you want to do on a Friday night. And starts by asking you, right? Tell me 4 stories where you felt deeply fulfilled and where you made some sort of achievement. Tell me those. And you write. It could be 1 or 2 sentences. Well, just doing that effort, if you took no other assessment, just asking you the question, and I've been asking my coaching clients that question for almost 20 years, right? Take 4 or 5 moments where you were on a high, where time flew by, where you had this great sense of, I can't believe I get paid for this. Just take 5 of these stories and write them down. And once they wrote them down and they came back to me, I would be like, I know everything I need to know about you, right? I don't need to do all this other intake because I know you based on how you pick these 5 stories. So SEMA was doing this with 4 stories. We pulled it together, and then we ask you a bunch of different questions about those stories. What about that story? If you said, well, Chris, I ran a marathon. The truth is, lots of people run a marathon. The question is, what about running that marathon was so amazing to you? And if you said, well, I used to be 500 pounds, and so running a marathon was an impossibility, I would have died on that course. And then what I did was I did all this little work, and I eventually ran a 10K, and then eventually I ran a half marathon. And this year the goal was, and so it was the consistent growth to get to a marathon. That's what made it special. And someone else says, no, I've run marathons my whole life, but this one I got my personal best, and I got the fastest score I've ever gotten. And that's what made it. Like, you can say the story, but even the story doesn't tell us what made it important to you. And so we start asking those questions, and we pull that data together. And at the end, what we give you back is a mirror that says, here's some deep insights about how you're wired. And here's how you can use it at home and with your family and with your friends and at work. And it changes people's lives. We've seen, I mentioned before, we've seen people quit their job and get a different job. We've seen people change their job within an organization. We've seen people say, okay, I'm going to go get a job, and now I know what to look for because I know what context where I thrive. We've seen people say, I want to cut my work down in half because I need more time with my family to invest in this family before it falls apart on me. We've seen all sorts of stories because people, it's not a magic trick. I don't tell you if you have a goatee or brown eyes. I tell you about you because I forced you to answer some serious questions about your achievement stories and what moved the needle for you. And then I'm able to bring that back out and say, now use this in all the rest of the stuff you're doing.
Powerful stuff. It really is. It really comes down to knowing yourself and just all of the decisions that you make about your life. And it's like holding up the most insightful mirror in front of someone so that they can really understand who they are and what they're doing. So what are you guys waiting for? If you haven't taken Motivation Code yet, then what are you waiting for? Now's the time. Go to motivationcode.com. You can go take that assessment and start knowing yourself. And it will. When I took it, I had to take it. Chris had to remind me, you need to finish this, because I walked away. I was like, I don't know which stories are most important. I really had to think about it. And, but knowing myself has changed a lot, not only in terms of like the decisions I make going forward, but in understanding the decisions I've made in the past and what I was trying to do and trying to give my life fulfillment and meaning. It would have been a lot easier if I had taken this assessment 20 years ago, but it's here now for y'all. So we're wrapping things up. It has been an interesting hour. Thank you for joining us for this live stream. And if you are not a part of the MCode Catalysts Wellness Challenge, we would love to have you join the group. I will drop that into the comments down below, as well as a link over to motivationcode.com so you can learn more. And Chris, thank you. I cannot thank you enough for coming and kicking off this inaugural live stream. We're going to do more of this because I think just it's such a good experience for people to come and meet more of the people on our team, meet more of the people in our community and what we're all doing. We're here to be of service. And of course, we have Mike Oliver, who is one of our team members, who is just an amazing person. He got a lot out of this, and I hope you do too. Drop a comment down below. Got a few more subscribers on the channel, so we would love a thumbs up if you got something from this. Drop a comment. Let us know what you got from it. Subscribe to the channel for more great content like this, and we will see you next time.